It started the way so many stories do, not with fireworks or confessions but with something small. Something quiet. A single item that didn't belong. We just gotten home from a Dodgers game, my son Danny still hyped up on garlic fries and the thrill of seeing a home run land just a few rows in front of us. I was exhausted but happy. He was 8 at that age where everything I did still mattered and I soaked it in while I could. I had no idea how much I'd come to cling to that afternoon in the months to come. I dropped our keys on the entry table, slung his backpack over the coat rack, and sent him upstairs to shower off the sweat and stadium dust. That's when I saw it. A leather glove. One single, black leather driving glove sitting on our kitchen table, half curled like someone had just taken it off. I paused mid-step trying to place it. I hadn't seen it before. Not on my hands, not in any drawer. My first reaction was confusion, not suspicion. Just a simple, quiet what the hell? I walked up to it and picked it up. It was heavy. Supple. Clearly expensive. Not something you find at a gas station or in the clearance bin at Target. It was the kind of accessory a man bought with intent. Carefully chosen. Cared for. And then I caught the scent. Cologne. Not mine. Too strong, too floral, with some kind of woodsy undertone. Like pine and pepper and ego. I hadn't smelled it before, not on me, not on Vanessa. That's when the unease started to set in. My thoughts began to reach out in all directions, trying to grasp something familiar, some explanation that made sense. I turned the glove over in my hands, checking for a tag, a name, anything that would tell me why this thing was here. Nothing. Just smooth black leather and that faint, stubborn smell. Vanessa's footsteps on the stairs snapped me out of it. She walked into the kitchen wrapped in a towel, her hair still damp from the shower. She looked relaxed, content even. Her eyes flicked to the glove, then to me. "Oh, that," she said casually, not missing a beat. "Probably the gardener's. He came inside Friday to use the bathroom and said he might have left something. My wife is good under pressure. Always has been." She could talk her way out of a paper bag with a smile on her face and a drink in hand. But something in her tone, maybe the way it was just a touch too rehearsed, didn't sit right. "The gardener?" I repeated, not accusing, just clarifying. "Yeah," she said, drying her ear with the towel. "He came early to check the irrigation line. I wasn't even sure he went in the house honestly, but maybe he did. I don't know." I nodded slowly, still holding the glove. "Our gardener, Hector, is a 60-year-old father of 4 who shows up in worn jeans and a flannel button-down no matter the weather. I liked him. We'd shared beers out by the shed a few times when he stayed late working on the new planter beds. In all the years he'd worked for us, he'd never once set foot inside the house. Not once. Vanessa knew that. She was the one who had always insisted we leave the side gate unlocked on his workdays specifically so he wouldn't need to come inside. She hated the idea of tracking mud through the house, especially after she redid the hardwood floors. But I didn't say any of that. I just said, huh, and gently set the glove back down. She disappeared into the bedroom and I stood there for a while, staring at the kitchen table like it might give me answers. But nothing about it made sense. The timing, the cologne, the way she didn't flinch when I held up the glove, all of it had the brittle, hollow sound of a lie. I took a deep breath, told myself to let it go, and failed. After Danny went to bed, I brought up the glove again. She was sitting on the couch watching some Netflix documentary about competitive flower arranging, something I normally would have teased her for. But I wasn't in the mood. "Did Hector ever call to say he was missing something?" I asked, keeping my tone light. She didn't even look away from the TV. "Nope. Maybe he found it in his truck or something." "Why?" she finally asked, glancing at me. I shrugged. Just thought it was odd. It didn't look like something he'd own. She paused, then laughed a little. "Maybe it was one of his kids. He's got, like, 3 boys, right? One of them drives." "I don't know." The subject dropped after that. But the glove was gone the next morning. Not in the trash. Not in the garage. Not tucked under the seat in the car. Gone. Like it had never been there. And that's when I knew. Not for sure, not in the way that holds up in court or even in an argument. But something inside me shifted. That quiet little voice in your head, the one you train yourself to ignore because it makes life harder, finally spoke up. And this time I listened. See, when you've been with someone long enough, you stop needing evidence. You just feel it. You learn their tells. Their rhythms. You notice the space where truth should be but isn't. And after that night, I started noticing everything. The glove wasn't proof. Not yet. But it was a crack in the surface of something I thought was solid. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. For the next few days, I caught myself watching her. Not in a creepy or possessive way, but like a stranger trying to memorize someone else's habits. The way she always kept her phone face down at dinner. How she suddenly started wearing perfume to run a 5-minute errand. How she'd lock the bathroom door even when she wasn't showering. Little things. Innocuous things. Except they weren't. Not anymore. I didn't bring up the glove again. What was the point? If she'd lied once, she'd lie again. And if I accused her without something real, something undeniable, I'd just be the paranoid husband picking fights over nothing. Still, I couldn't shake the image of that glove. The way it looked, the way it smelled, the fact that she hadn't been even a little surprised to see it sitting on the table. I started to run scenarios in my head. Maybe I'd misread it. Maybe she was telling the truth. Maybe it was Hector's. But that didn't sit right either. Because if it were harmless, if it really were just something the gardener left behind, why make it disappear? Why lie about it? That question stayed with me, echoing in the back of my mind like a song stuck on repeat. And though I didn't know it yet, that glove was the thread that would unravel everything. The day before the glove showed up, I would have sworn my marriage was solid. Not perfect, we'd had our arguments, our dry spells, our miscommunications, but real. Stable. The kind of marriage people envied from the outside. And maybe that's why the shift hit so hard. Because I didn't just doubt the glove. I started to doubt everything. And once that seed of doubt is planted, it doesn't take long to grow. After the glove vanished, it didn't take much for the floodgates to open. It's like my mind had been collecting little red flags for months without me even realizing it, stuffing them in some back corner labeled probably nothing. But that glove? That glove dragged the box out into the light, tore the lid off, and forced me to take a good hard look at everything I'd been too tired, too trusting, or too naive to question. It wasn't just the cologne-scented leather glove sitting smugly on the kitchen table. It was the perfume, her perfume. Vanessa had always had this one scent she wore for special occasions. Light floral, just a hint of something warm and musky underneath. She'd put it on for date nights, weddings, those once-in-a-blue-moon moments when we dressed up and tried to remember what it felt like to be 25 again. But lately, I'd catch a trace of it when she left for what she called quick errands, grocery store runs, trips to the post office, picking up dry cleaning that never actually seemed to materialize. And she never used to care about her appearance for that kind of thing. But now? Now it was lip gloss, curled hair, perfume. Just to buy eggs? The first time I noticed it, I told myself I was overthinking. Maybe she just felt like dressing up. Maybe she was trying to boost her mood. But that explanation only got me through the first week. After that, it started feeling like she wasn't dressing up for herself at all. Then there was the phone. Her phone used to live on the kitchen counter, face up, always buzzing with group texts and Instagram notifications. Now it was always on silent. Always face down. And if it did buzz, she'd scoop it up in one motion, glance at it, and tuck it away like it had something to hide. Sometimes I'd walk into a room and she'd lower it mid-text, screen going dark like a magician's final flourish. I didn't say anything, not right away. I wasn't ready to hear what she might say back. But it sat with me heavy. We used to share everything, passwords, playlists, even stupid memes at 1 a.m. So when did we start keeping secrets? The migraines started about 6 months ago. That's what she called them. Ugh, babe, I've got that pressure behind my eyes again. I don't think I can handle the drive. That was the first time she bailed on one of Danny's school events, his science night. He was doing a volcano demo he'd been talking about for weeks. She stayed home in the dark with a blanket over her head, asking me to text updates. I bought it. But then it happened again. And again. Birthday parties, family cookouts, soccer games. Always with the migraines. And always right before she'd disappear into the bedroom for a nap, only to emerge a few hours later perfectly refreshed, hair brushed, makeup reapplied. Almost like she hadn't been sick at all. Still, I wanted to believe her. I didn't want to think something was wrong. Until the night she said she was too sick to come to the back-to-school open house, said the flu was coming on fast and she was going to take NyQuil and sleep. But half an hour later, I checked Facebook out of habit and saw her tagged in a story at a bar across town. She wasn't tagged by name. It was one of those blurry group sh*TS, the kind people post with too many hashtags. But I knew her. I knew the red leather jacket she loved, the way she threw her head back when she laughed. And there she was, drink in hand, smiling at someone just off frame. I stared at the screen for a long time, trying to convince myself it wasn't her. That it was just someone who looked like her, that I was letting my jealousy get the best of me. But deep down, I already knew. When I asked her about it the next day, I didn't even mention the photo. Just said something vague, hey, did you end up resting okay last night? She didn't miss a beat. Yeah, out like a light. Didn't even hear you come in. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab my phone, pull up the post, shove it in her face and yell, then who the hell is this? But I didn't. I nodded and kissed her on the cheek. Because at that point it wasn't about proving anything to her. It was about seeing how far she was willing to go with the lie. And I wasn't done collecting evidence. Another thing started bothering me: dishes in the sink. Not the usual stuff, our plates, coffee mugs, cereal bowls. These were different. A wine glass I didn't recognize. A fork left next to a paper napkin with lipstick I don't remember Vanessa wearing. I'm not the most observant guy in the world, but when the same unfamiliar dish shows up more than once, you start to notice. One night I came home late from work, later than usual. Vanessa was already in bed, lights off, claiming she was wiped out. I made my way to the kitchen for a glass of water and saw the sink, 2 plates, 2 glasses, and a half-empty bottle of Merlot on the counter with a cork sticking out like a white flag. We hadn't had dinner together that night. She told me she'd just grabbed takeout. So who were the 2 glasses for? I picked one up. Lipstick again. She didn't drink red wine when she was alone. She always said it gave her a headache. So either she had someone over or she was suddenly developing a new taste for headaches. I sat on the couch that night and thought about everything. The glove. The perfume. The phone habits. The skipped family events. The mysterious wine. The disappearing migraines. The bar photo. The lie about going to sleep. Each one alone might have meant nothing. But together? Together, they painted a picture. A mosaic. A shape I could finally make out, one I tried so hard to ignore. It was betrayal. Slow. Steady. Hidden behind smiles and half-truths. And the worst part? She was good at it. She didn't act guilty. Didn't flinch when I looked her in the eye. She kissed me goodbye every morning, laughed at my jokes, still sent me the occasional "thinking of you" text like everything was fine. But I knew her too well. And now I could see the cracks she was working so hard to cover up. I started to feel like a stranger in my own home. Like I was watching someone else's life unfold. Every time she touched me, it felt like an experiment. Was she trying to see if I'd notice? Or was it guilt? I didn't know what to do with all of it. I couldn't confront her, not yet. I needed more. I needed something she couldn't explain away. Because if I accused her too early, she'd just go underground. Get smarter. Better at hiding it. I needed to be sure. Because if I was right, and God, I hoped I wasn't, but if I was, this wasn't just a rough patch. This was the beginning of the end point. 3 days after the wine glasses, I stopped pretending. I had always seen myself as a man who gives the benefit of the doubt. Maybe to a fault. But that night, staring at the footage from the backyard security camera I'd installed months ago, I realized there was no doubt left to give. There it was. The truth, undeniable and cold, playing out on a screen in my darkened garage like a scene from a film I never auditioned for. I hadn't meant to check the camera. Not really. It was one of those spur-of-the-moment decisions, part instinct, part desperation. I had installed it myself when someone broke into a neighbor's shed earlier that year. Vanessa called it an overreaction, but I thought of it as responsible. I'd almost forgotten about it. Until that night, I was sitting alone in the garage, sipping a beer I didn't want, thinking about how Vanessa had called me from the grocery store saying she was running late. Said the lines were long. Told me not to wait up for dinner. It was past 8 o'clock when I remembered the camera. Just a hunch, a flicker of suspicion that came out of nowhere but refused to be ignored. The footage wasn't live, it only saved motion-activated clips, but it had a memory card and I hadn't cleared it in weeks. I pulled out my laptop, connected the drive, and started scanning backward. The first clips were boring. Birds flying past. The mailman. Danny chasing the dog last Sunday. Then something caught my eye. A clip from 1:47 p.m. 6 days ago. A weekday. I was at work. Danny was at school. Vanessa, supposedly working from home, had said she'd spent the afternoon on conference calls. The clip was grainy but clear enough. The side gate opened. Vanessa stepped out from the back door, smiling, actually smiling, and waved someone in. A man. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. I couldn't see his face, not clearly, but the way he walked, confident like he belonged, made my skin crawl. Vanessa stepped aside to let him in like she'd done it before. She didn't hesitate. Didn't check the street. Didn't lock the door behind them. They were inside the house for over 2 hours. Another clip, 3:56 p.m. They reappeared. She walked him out to the gate, both of them laughing at something. And then he reached down and kissed her. She kissed him back. It wasn't quick. It wasn't uncertain. It wasn't the kind of goodbye shared between co-workers or old friends. It was an asterisk, mate. Familiar. My stomach flipped. But what made it worse, what made my chest feel like it was being crushed, was his shirt. He was wearing one of mine. Not just the same brand. The exact shirt. Faded blue flannel with a small tear near the cuff, the one I usually wore when doing yard work. I hadn't seen it in a while. Figured it was in the laundry pile or maybe shoved in the back of a drawer. But it wasn't. He was wearing it. And she was laughing. The kiss ended. She straightened his collar like they were married. Like he was hers. I shut the laptop. For a while, I couldn't move. I sat there in the garage, fingers pressed against my temples, trying to breathe. Trying to process the fact that the person I shared a bed with, the person who told me she loved me every night, was kissing someone else while I was working to pay for the roof over our heads. My hands started shaking. Not from rage. Not at first. Just disbelief. My brain couldn't make the pieces fit. This wasn't some flirty message or a vague photo on social media. This was my wife. On camera. Welcoming another man into our home, into our life, into me. Wearing my clothes. Touching my wife. The betrayal wasn't abstract anymore. It wasn't a feeling. It was a fact. I replayed the footage once. Just once. I needed to make sure I wasn't projecting. That I hadn't misread something, anything. But there was no room for doubt. Vanessa had let a man into our house, kissed him in our backyard, and stood there smiling while he wore my clothes like a badge of ownership. That was the moment I broke. Not in a loud, destructive way. I didn't punch walls. Didn't scream. I just went still. The kind of still you only get when your body gives up on fighting what your mind has already accepted. I sat there until the garage light flicked off from lack of motion. When I finally got up, I didn't go inside. I didn't want to see her. I didn't trust myself to act normal, and I had to, at least for now. Because the only thing more dangerous than a man betrayed is a man betrayed with proof and a plan. I needed both. And suddenly, I had one. I spent the next few hours creating a new email address and a hidden folder on a separate drive. I copied the clip. I backed it up 3 different ways: USB, cloud, and an encrypted folder on an old external hard drive I hadn't touched in years. I named the files something generic. Something boring. Something she'd never think to look for. Then I took out the shirt. I found it draped over a chair in the laundry room, faintly scented with that same damn cologne. I didn't smell it up close. I didn't need to. I folded it carefully and placed it in a plastic bag, sealing it like evidence. Because that's what it was now. A piece of the puzzle. A detail she had overlooked in her rush to erase the trail. When I walked back inside, the house was quiet. Vanessa was in the bedroom, scrolling on her phone like nothing had changed. She looked up when I passed by and smiled. "Everything okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah. Just organizing some stuff in the garage." She didn't ask what. Didn't press. Just went back to whatever she was pretending to care about. "And me?" I smiled. I kissed her forehead. Because now I knew. I knew everything. She wasn't just cheating. She was lying with every breath, weaving a fantasy so tightly around me that it almost worked. Almost, but not anymore. Now every touch felt staged. Every smile, a performance. Every casual "I love you," a script she recited while another man's scent clung to her skin. And I was done being part of her play. That night, as I lay beside her, watching her fall asleep under our shared blanket, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't even breathe too loud. I stared at the ceiling and whispered to myself, "You have your answer." It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a phase. It wasn't a mistake. It was betrayal. And I wasn't going to let it end here. Something broke in me that night, but not in the way people expect. It wasn't an explosion. It wasn't loud. There were no slammed doors, no screaming, no throwing accusations into the air just to watch them land like knives. No. When I broke, it was quiet. Surgical. Cold. And I think that's what saved me. Because from the moment I saw her with him, her hand in his lips on hers, his shoulders wrapped in a shirt I used to mow the lawn in, I knew I couldn't confront her the way she'd expect. That would give her time. Time to spin it, time to cry, time to reach for the sympathy card and play it like a virtuoso. Vanessa was smart. She was charismatic. She could turn guilt into gold if given a stage. So I gave her silence instead. And while she slept, I began rearranging the world around her. The first step was money. Our accounts had been joint since year 2 of our marriage when we bought the house. We were a team, or so I thought. But I also knew she had no idea how much of the actual system I controlled. Direct deposits, investment accounts, the safe deposit box she never bothered to ask about because, in her words, "You're better at that stuff." I started slow. I transferred modest amounts at first, nothing noticeable. From our checking to a separate savings account I'd opened in my cousin Jared's name 2 years ago as a backup for Danny's college fund. Vanessa never liked Jared. She wouldn't have guessed he'd help me. That made him perfect. Next came the credit cards. We had 3, one for daily expenses, one for travel, and one for emergencies which she hadn't used in months. I changed the password on all 3, rerouted paper statements to my office, and froze 2 of them under the guise of suspicious activity. Technically, it wasn't a lie. Just not the kind she'd recognize. Then came the passwords. I updated every account that mattered: utility logins, insurance, tax documents, anything tied to my name. It took hours. But by sunrise, she was officially locked out of every financial portal she once had a key to. The only thing I didn't touch was her phone. Let her keep it. Let her keep texting him, calling him, planning little meetings and love notes. I wanted her to feel safe. Untouched. Victorious. She'd think she was winning. That's how I wanted it. I made her coffee that morning. French press, the way she liked it. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "You're sweet," without a shred of irony. I smiled back. "You're worth it." And that's when I knew I could do it, keep playing the role. The loving husband. The steady hand. The man with no clue. She trained herself to think of me that way, passive, trusting, maybe a little slow when it came to nuance. That worked in my favor now. I started documenting. I kept a file, dates, times, details. Every day she left the house dressed like she was going to a gala, every time she claimed to have a late meeting, every time she put her phone face down at dinner. I logged it. I timestamped it. I even printed still frames from the security footage. I became my own detective, my own lawyer, my own insurance policy. I didn't stop being a father. Danny didn't need to know anything. If I was short-tempered or distracted, he didn't show it. I tucked him in at night, helped with his homework, played catch in the yard like nothing had changed. But I couldn't help noticing how Vanessa started acting warmer around him. Like guilt made her softer. She baked more. Started asking about his school projects. Read to him at bedtime. It made me furious in a quiet, sickening way. Because now she was performing for our son. And I wasn't going to let her turn this into her redemption arc. By week 3, I'd met with an attorney. Discreetly. A woman named Linda Benton, recommended by Jared's wife. Her office was clinical and efficient, all glass and sharp corners. She didn't waste time with fluff. Infidelity, she asked after I told her the basics. I nodded. I have video proof. Her eyebrows rose slightly. That'll help. Any joint properties or hidden debts I should know about? No debts. House is in both names, but the mortgage is under mine. No prenup. She tapped a pen against her notebook, then smiled faintly. You're ahead of most men I see. I handed her the USB drive. She slid it into her laptop without flinching. She didn't comment on the footage. Didn't gasp or show pity. Just watched it with the flat professionalism of someone who's seen too many lives unravel on screen. When the video ended, she simply said, "You'll want to get a DNA test just to be safe." That stopped me. Danny? I asked, already defensive. He's mine. She didn't blink. Probably. But if she's been unfaithful for a while, you'd be shocked how often paternity comes into play. It's better to know now. I hated her for saying it. But she wasn't wrong. I did it a few days later. Secretly. A cheek swab while Danny slept. Dropped off at a private clinic across town. I paid extra for expedited results. While I waited, I kept up the act. Vanessa had no idea. She was radiant lately, lighter on her feet. She started humming in the kitchen, wearing lipstick more often, asking if I wanted to take a weekend trip somewhere. Just us. It almost made me laugh, because the happier she acted, the closer we got to the fall. And I was going to make sure it was the kind of fall you don't come back from. One night, we sat on the porch after dinner, wine glasses in hand. She scooted her chair closer, rested her head against my shoulder, and said, "I love this. This feels like the old days." I looked down at her and said, "Me too," and I meant it. Not because it was true, but because in that moment I realized something important. She didn't know I'd already left. Not physically. I still kissed her, still held her hand, still lay beside her at night. But emotionally, mentally, spiritually, I was gone. Gone the second I saw that kiss in our backyard. Gone the second I watched her brush lint off his shoulder like she'd done to me for years. Gone the second I realized she had become someone I couldn't protect my son from if I didn't act. I checked the mail the next afternoon. The results were there. 2 pages. One line that mattered. Paternity probability, 0%. My breath left me in a soundless exhale. I read it again. Then a third time. I sat on the floor of my office for a while. Not crying. Just stunned. Empty. Danny wasn't biologically mine. And somehow that still didn't change how I felt about him. It only changed how I felt about her. Because now it wasn't just betrayal. It was layered, constructed, ongoing. She had looked me in the eye for years and built a life on lies. And I had loved her for every single one of them. No more. I picked up my phone and called Linda. "It's time," I said. "Let's set the plan in motion." Because Vanessa might have started the game. But I was going to end it. If betrayal is a poison, then revenge is the antidote that doesn't heal you, but numbs the burn long enough to survive. Vanessa had no idea. None. The day I got the DNA results, she kissed me with the same lips that had whispered someone else's name. She stood in our kitchen, barefoot in one of my shirts, humming along to a playlist I had made for our anniversary 5 years earlier. The nerve of it. The sheer audacity. But she didn't sense the shift, not yet. Because I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. And the opportunity one needed? It landed in my lap like fate was tired of watching me play the fool. Vanessa's nonprofit was launching its biggest campaign yet. A city-sponsored event hosted downtown in one of those buildings with marble floors, skylights, and a guest list that included donors, community leaders, and just enough local press to make people nervous about red wine near tablecloths. She'd been talking about it for months. Rehearsing speeches, obsessing over signage and seating charts. This wasn't just a job to her. It was her identity, her stage. She called it the culmination of a decade of work. I called it perfect timing. I didn't rush. That was important. This couldn't feel emotional. It had to feel inevitable, like gravity. I spent the days leading up to the event tightening the bolts on everything I'd set in motion. The lawyer had the divorce packet ready, sealed, notarized, waiting like a guillotine in a manila envelope. The financial assets were fully isolated. Bank accounts frozen. Mortgage secured. I even moved the title of my car into a trust account under Danny's name, though at that point the irony was bitter. The only thing left to do was show her what she had done. And I chose the one place she wouldn't be able to dodge it. Not with tears. Not with charm. Not with more lies. The morning of the event, Vanessa was glowing. There's no other word for it. She wore a navy blue pantsuit that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage. Hair perfect. Earrings subtle but expensive. The kind of look designed to scream, "I'm in control," without looking like she needed to say it. "You ready?" she asked, grabbing her tote bag and phone. I smiled. Always. We drove downtown in silence, not because of tension. She didn't suspect anything. But because she was too busy scrolling through final talking points on her phone. Every few minutes she'd mutter to herself, pacing in her head. I pretended to be calm, supportive. I held her hand at red lights. "You're going to be amazing," I said. She squeezed my fingers. "I love you." The words didn't hit anymore. They fell somewhere in front of me, limp and meaningless. The venue was already buzzing by the time we arrived. Vanessa was ushered away by her team, a pack of junior staffers and nervous interns who looked at her like she was a senator. I stayed near the back, blending in. That was the plan. The main event was scheduled for noon. Her keynote speech. 15 minutes of polished storytelling, statistics, and a polished call to action. But this time, she wasn't going to be the only one holding a microphone. The AV guy was a friend of a friend. He owed me a favor, a big one. I handed him a flash drive in a nondescript sleeve the night before, labeled Presentation Backup, Vanessa M. He never even looked at me twice. And inside that drive, a short, silent video, footage from the backyard camera. Vanessa greeting the man. Vanessa kissing him. The shirt. The smiles. Then a slow dissolve into **TS of the financial transfers Vanessa had made. Little bits of money sent out weekly to a PayPal account under a fake business name. All traceable. And then, at the end, the paternity test. One line. One number. Probability of paternity. 0.00%. Black text. White screen. No music. No explanation. Just the facts. I stood near the back of the room, calm as a statue. I watched as people filled their seats, sipping catered coffee and balancing programs on their laps. I watched Vanessa step onto the stage, smile like she was born for it, and thank everyone for being part of something bigger than themselves. She spoke about community, about trust, about building something lasting. She never saw it coming. 3 minutes into her speech, the screen behind her flickered. One glitch, then another. She paused briefly, made a joke. Live tech, right? And turned to nod at her AV guy. That's when the first frame hit the screen. Vanessa, in the backyard. I watched her smile melt. She froze mid-sentence, eyes locked on the screen, mouth slightly open. The crowd followed her gaze. Another frame. The kiss. A collective shift swept through the room. Chairs creaking, quiet murmurs. Someone near the front gasping aloud. One of the city sponsors stood up abruptly. Her assistant dropped the clipboard. Vanessa turned fully now, facing the footage like a deer staring into its own headlights. Still, the video kept playing. The financial screensh *TS appeared next. Her name, his name, the transfers. Every line item pulled from the shared accounts she thought I'd never notice. And finally, the white screen with the DNA result. Silence. Not the respectful kind. Not even the awkward kind. The kind that feels like something just died. Vanessa turned back to the crowd. Her face was pale. She reached for the microphone again. Like words could undo what they'd just seen. But I was already walking toward the exit. I didn't stop. Didn't wait for fallout. That part wasn't mine anymore. I walked past people staring at the screen, at her, at me. I saw 2 board members whispering urgently. I heard someone say lawsuit under their breath. Another said, was that real? And someone else murmured, oh my God, her kid? I didn't stop walking. Outside, the sun was brighter than I expected. Traffic moved past like nothing had happened. Birds chirped. Somewhere nearby, a food truck generator hummed softly. I exhaled. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Linda. Ready when you are. She'll be served within the hour. I typed back 2 words. Let it happen. And then I drove home. By the time Vanessa returned that night, the house was already transformed. Her office emptied. Her closet thinned. The safe password changed. The lawyer's envelope sat on the kitchen counter, flanked by 2 items. Her wedding ring and a printout of the test results. She didn't come in crying. She came in stunned. Hollow. I didn't even need to speak. I nodded toward the envelope. Her hands trembled when she picked it up. She didn't sit down. What is this? She asked, voice quiet, almost childlike. The end, I said. And the truth. Tears welled up. You didn't have to do it like that. Neither did you, I said. I didn't mean. I held up a hand. You had time for meaning, Vanessa. Months. Years. Now it's time for consequences. She looked like she might collapse. But I didn't move to catch her. She wasn't mine to protect anymore. The divorce papers hit her the next morning. Served at her office, just as her board tried to triage the fallout from her public implosion. Her face, red, shell-shocked, made it into one local outlet's photo, buried beneath headlines about her nonprofit suspension. I had already locked her out of every shared account. The house, the cars, the savings, mine. She couldn't even access her work laptop. Her own parents called to say they were disappointed and stepping back. She tried to fight custody until the paternity test silenced that too. Danny stayed with me, not out of spite, but because he was mine in every way that mattered.